They took about a 6-mile stretch of the ring road around Madrid. This was the conservative government in Madrid, and they buried it underground. And where the ring road used to be, they created a world-class park in about the last 10 years. So you might think about that. We can send you some information about that.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
And then New York City, over the past 10 years, has created the 32-mile Manhattan River, or Manhattan Waterfront Greenway, which is a bike path and hiking trail and walking trail around the entire island of Manhattan. And it's beautiful, and it's taken form, an industrial wasteland on the waterfront. Mostly on the west side, because on the east side you always had the East Side Promenade.
Yeah.
But made it into a world-class park as well. And then we know very little about this, but I've been there. The Havana River in Havana, Cuba.
Okay.
They're restoring that as well.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
In a society which is dedicated to eliminating poverty and disparities. So I just offer that food for thought. But I see you feature our work with Anahuac and others right here. We're very grateful to you for that. We're profoundly grateful to you for that.
We've been talking long distance, and we thought, no, we need to come and sit and talk and engage face to face.
Thank you.
Because the work is very important, and your experiences and the lessons that you've learned may help another community across the country, around the world, to pursue similar efforts and to really begin to create the kinds of places on this planet that we really want for all of our people to live and work and play and enjoy and be able to exchange with each other. So if I might ask you just to introduce yourself and give us the day and place of this interview.
My name is Robert Garcia. I am founding director and counsel of the City Project. We are a nonprofit policy and legal advocacy team. We are based in Los Angeles, California, that our work extends throughout California and has implications for national environmental justice and civil rights work. Today is June 4th, 2013, and this interview is taking place here at the offices of the City Project.
Okay, thank you. I've been asked to ask this question right off the bat. Do you happen to have a piece of, please forgive my pronunciation, the Sangha Madre? And would you tell us what the significance is of
Do we
that?
have a piece of the Sangha Madre?
Yeah.
No, it had never occurred to me to take a piece, but now that you suggest it. The Sangha Madre is Spanish for mother trench or mother ditch, and it refers to the trench or canal that brought water from the Los Angeles River through the original Pueblo de Los Angeles, and indeed until the early part of the 20th century brought water that then went on to irrigate other parts of LA. They stopped using it, I believe, when Mulholland stole the water from the Owens Valley and brought it down in a canal through the San Fernando Valley. But the Sangha Madre really was the lifeblood of Los Angeles. Without the water, there could be no Pueblo and no further development. The Sangha Madre is hugely important in the work that we've done for the following reasons. We started the City Project in 2000, and our flagship project is what is now known as Los Angeles State Historic Park. It is a 32-acre park in downtown Los Angeles. When we started, the City of LA and Majestic Realty, headed by Ed Roski, one of the wealthiest developers in the nation, we're proposing to put 32 acres of warehouses there with no proper environmental review and without community participation. And through an organizing campaign, ultimately we stopped the warehouse project. We persuaded the state of California to buy the land for a park, and it is now Los Angeles State Historic Park.
Is that what had been referred to as the cornfield?
The cornfield, exactly. It is at the site of the cornfield. And the Los Angeles Times called that community victory a heroic monument and a symbol of hope. And the LA Times, that was the LA Times magazine, the LA Times itself on the front page did a story on how activists prevailed there. And it starts with the great sentence that on an abandoned rail yard in downtown Los Angeles, Ed Roski, one of the most tenacious real estate developers in the nation, met his match. So that's inspiring. We have both of those articles on the wall in our offices. But the Sangha Madre played a vital role because literally the day we were testifying before a city agency on why the site should be a park and not warehouses, amateur archaeologists found part of the Sangha Madre in the site of the cornfield itself. And that's what we had been arguing, that the site is like the Ellis Island of Los Angeles. It is where virtually every racial and ethnic group, including Native Americans, first got their start in LA. So when the Spanish arrived, the largest Native American village was in Yangna, at or surrounding the site of the cornfield. Then the Spanish arrived and camped in the foothills overlooking the cornfield and the LA River. When the Chinese arrived, they lived on the other side, the wrong side of the tracks, closest to the river, because when the river flooded, the Chinese would get wiped out. When the Japanese arrived, they started what became known as Little Tokyo, which is just south of the cornfield. The French and Italian communities also got their start through that area. Indeed, in El Pueblo Historic Park, there is Italian Hall, and the area was had vineyards from the French. And so, in short, every racial and ethnic group that's been in LA has gotten its start there, which was a huge part of our organizing effort for making it a state historic park and not warehouses. So the Sangha Madre, again, flowed through the site to El Pueblo. And indeed, after the site had been made into a park, they were working on the commuter rail line that goes along the site. And Sean Woods, who is now the director of state parks for the area, commuted to work on that rail line and looked out his window and saw that they were excavating the foothill and saw bricks and said, "That's the Sangha Madre." And he called us, he called the councilman's office, and each of us called MTA and said, "You've got to stop the excavation until we figure out what's going on here." And if you go there now, there's actually the Sangha Madre, the bricks that were exposed, are preserved for public view.
Okay, I was going to ask if the Sangha Madre had been restored to public consciousness.
Certainly to public consciousness. It has not been physically restored, and only that portion that was inadvertently dug up is exposed to public view. But that's part of the reason for the struggle to create Los Angeles State Historic Park. Los Angeles is famous for forgetting its history, for collective amnesia, and a huge part of the work we've done has been to restore the forgotten history of Los Angeles, in part by telling the story of the cornfield and El Pueblo and many people who came here. So that's a long answer to your question about what is the Sangha Madre and do we have a piece of it?
And the answer, I think, is yes. We should all be carrying a piece in our consciousness, in our hearts.
Absolutely. We agree with you 100%. The Sangha Madre is a part of what Los Angeles is and who a part of what Angelinos are, and we can never forget that fact.
Tell us a little bit, if you will, about your background and what has brought you to working on issues about people, places, and the LA River.
People, places, the LA River, and justice.
And justice.
Because that's what distinguishes the work of the City Project. We focus on environmental justice and equal access to public resources. That's what distinguishes us from mainstream environmentalists. If there are no social justice issues, we do not get involved. Not because we're against mainstream environmental values, but because the mainstream environmentalists have more than enough resources to deal with those issues. We have nothing to add to what they're doing, and so to make best use of our limited resources, we focus on equal access to public resources, including parks. In terms of my background, I was born in Guatemala. I came to the United States when I was 4 years old. First we moved to Newburgh, New York, because my grandparents were living there, and my uncle, who had, the first one who came to the United States from Guatemala, was stationed at Stewart Air Force Base there. And we lived there for 2 years. And then my father said, that's it. We're not spending another winter in New York because there's no snow in Guatemala. And we packed up all the belongings, the family belongings, in the back of the Plymouth and a U-Haul trailer. And we drove across the United States on Route 66 to LA. We got our kicks on Route 66. And so I grew up and went to high school in Los Angeles. And then, this is important in terms of your question of why I do what I do. I went to both college and law school at Stanford. And when I was in law school, I studied with Tony Amsterdam, who has been the architect behind the movement to abolish the death penalty through the courts for the last 50 years or more now. Everything I've ever done as an attorney has been influenced by Tony Amsterdam. But I think the central lesson that I took away from working with him was to strive to do justice and not just practice law. So, as I said, the mission of the City Project is equal justice, democracy, and livability for all. The 4 areas that we have focused on include equal access to parks and recreation, first of all. Second, quality education, including physical education. Third, the health issues and health disparities from the lack of places for physical activity in parks and schools and underserved communities. And fourth, in the continuing economic crisis, the worst crisis since the Great Depression, green jobs, including jobs in parks and schools, to help get the nation back to work again and create a sustainable society. So I think Tony Amsterdam's influence has been profound. I think 2 other sets of influences, my grandfather, and finally I went to 11 schools by the time I graduated from the 12th grade, but I also went to one school about a few blocks from where our offices are now, Immaculate Conception School. And I think the sisters expected us to grow up to be saints. And I'm not a saint by any means, but they did instill in me that each of us has to do what he can to save his own soul. So I think the combination of my grandfather, Tony Amsterdam, and Immaculate Conception sisters instilled in me doing justice.
How do you articulate, and I think you do it very well, of course, but how do you articulate so that any resident can understand the connection between equal access, justice, health, good health, and physical well-being, and environmental action. It seems like an odd mix, but how do you get people to understand the interconnections?
First of all, I think, the assumption is that people of color and low-income people don't get it. That, and in our experience, that's just not true. They get it better than anybody, in part because they don't have the things that they know are necessary to healthy living, including access to parks, for physical recreation, for having fun, access to healthy food. So it's going, as attorneys, we have to prove what we all know is true. So when we started the work on the city project in 2000 and the work on LA State Historic Park, what is now LA State Historic Park, I grew up in LA, so I knew there are not enough parks in LA, first of all, and second, there's a lot more parks on the west side than downtown and the east side. But like I said, we have to prove what we all know is true. So what we did was we actually mapped the entire city and county of Los Angeles at the census tract level and created what at the time was the most complete current electronic database of parks in Los Angeles. And then we layered on top of that demographics based on race, color, national origin, income, poverty, and so on. And so we had pictures, we had maps that demonstrated the fundamental reality that we illuminated, that children of color living in poverty with no access to a car have the worst access to parks. They have the worst access to schools with 5 acres or more of playing fields. They have the highest levels of childhood obesity. They're the most at risk for gangs, crime, drugs, and violence. So we spent a lot of time and resources and money working with our mapping consultants, telling that story through those maps. And that's one way you tell a story, in ways that everybody can immediately grasp. As you look at the picture of where green space is in LA, and there's virtually no people of color there. And you look at where the people of color are, and there's virtually no parks there. So we started using the phrase LA is park poor in 2000, and pretty soon that phrase was rolling off the lips of every elected official and every park advocate. So what we do is well, we use 5 strategies. One, coalition building. And in the cornfield, for example, the LA State Historic Park, we helped put together one of the most diverse alliances that had ever come together behind any issue in LA, by articulating the different values at stake in parks. So it's not, our central value is children have the right to play. Children have the right to have fun. And the United Nations recognizes the child's right to play as a fundamental human right. And I'm told every nation in the world has adopted the Declaration of the Rights of the Child, except for 2, the United States and Somalia. So we found that advocating for the right to children to have fun didn't get us very far. Nobody took it seriously. And that's when we started, based on our research, we learned that the health implications, the obesity implications of not having places for physical activity, and that made park access a first-order priority instead of a second or third-order priority. So 1 is coalition building. 2 is translating research into policy, law, and real change on the grounds. And they're interrelated because, again, when we first started working on the cornfield, mainstream environmentalists asked